This is Simon from Rideshare Dashboard, and today I'm going to be showing you how to file your taxes with Turbotax online for your income from Uber and Lyft, and then also delivery services such as Amazon, Postmates, and Instacart. So you start off with going to turbotax.com and signing up for a free online account, and then once you log into the account, you're going to be presented with these options. You can choose whichever option applies to you. So if you paid rent, then you choose that off, or if you have a W-2. But the version you need is the self-employed version, which allows you to enter in your business income and expenses. And it will also fill out your Schedule C for you, which you'll need to file with the IRS. So this is the only version that you can use. And as you can see, this is one of the most expensive versions for you. So this is just a simple profile of you. You can get through this pretty quick. So for this tax return, I'm going to be doing it for a person who is single and that don't have any of these other things such as dependents, home, or paid rent. They ask you those questions because there's very specific areas of the tax return that applies. So, and TurboTax tends to ask you a whole lot of questions. So I'm going to skip all of these other types of income as well and just focus on the self-employed income, especially from Lyft and Uber and Amazon. So as you can see, the last screen didn't have a choice for self-employed income. Is because it assumes because you're choosing the self-employed version of TurboTax that you have self-employed income. So that's the reason why they didn't ask. So it does look kind of weird that even though this is self-employed, it doesn't even show that version. So I would recommend having all the paperwork with you before you start this because it's kind of a pain to go through this whole process and then having to go back and enter in some extra income. So I would definitely wait until you get all your W-2s, your 1099s before doing any of this. And then also preparing your mileage records. Not to say that you need to submit them, but so you have an accurate number to put into the later steps. And then also having all your business deductions or business expenses. So I'm just trying to get through this as fast as possible. Try not to choose that many options. So I'm just making sure that I'm filling out the tax return for just one state. I don't have any other income from any other states. I wasn't affected by a hurricane. And then every once in a while, they'll keep asking you about whether you need a CPA or expert advice. It comes up every so often, every time you go from one section to the next. Okay, so this is where all the income stuff is for TurboTax. So obviously, I said that I for this tax return, I don't have a W-2, but obviously check that off if you have any of these. They do keep asking you because it does look kind of weird that you only have self-employed income. But again, make sure to fill them out if you have it. But I'm just going to be focusing on the self-employed income and expenses, which is this guy here. So you're going to see a couple of different options. Just say yes. And I thought it was very odd that it actually had rideshare driving, which is pretty specific. And that again, that rideshare driving always comes up. I've done this about probably five or six times already, and it always comes up. So you just say it's your side job. This applies if the reason why they ask you a question is because of estimated taxes. So if you started it in 2017, You wouldn't necessarily have to make estimated tax payments this year, but if you have started the previous year, then you would need to this year. So it does kind of check for that. This just asks you if you paid somebody else to do the work for you, and none of these apply as well. So you can skip through some of those. You can, if you want, enter in your business name and also your employer ID number if you sign up for a business. So Lyft and Uber sends out two different 1099s depending on how you earned your income. So for all rides, it's a 1099-K. It's listed under credit card payments typically, but this is the form that you'll find all of your ride income from. So it's a 1099. For the 1099 miscellaneous, it is for Lyft and Uber specifically. They are typically bonuses such as referral bonuses, boost on Uber, or the power driving bonus for Lyft. Those are probably the most common ones. And also any kind of one-time payments like damage, like some kind of payout due to passenger damage. It would also be under a 1099 miscellaneous as well. But for deliveries, it's kind of backwards. For delivery services, they only send you a 1099 miscellaneous because they typically don't take a commission off of what you earn. They typically pay you a fixed fee or an hourly guarantee depending on what service you use. So they typically pay you directly from the company to you. So it's typically classified as a 1099 miscellaneous. Whereas for Lyft and Uber, predominantly most of your earnings will be a 1099K for ride earnings. So let's just start with the 1099Ks first. So this is where you're going to need your 1099K, and you're going to just report the main number that you get. So I'm going to say Uber, I earned $10,000 this year. And then on Lyft, I also earned $10,000. So those are my two services. If you have any more services that you drive for, maybe for Get or for any other service, Fasten in Austin and Boston, or Juno in New York, then you would continue to list them. But I only drive for Lyft and Uber this year. So then we're gonna get to the deduction part of it. The main two are your mileage deductions for the use of your car, and then also the commissions that you will have to deduct off. And TurboTax this year has made it much clearer, especially for Lyft and Uber drivers, to do their taxes. So I'm gonna walk through the first four, or the main four deductions that they have here, or five rather. And this is gonna be the two main ones are this one, the miscellaneous expenses, and then also for vehicle expenses. Okay. You can, so there was on the last screen, there was a drop down for other deductions. You can take a close look at those and see which one applies to you, but for the sake of this video, I'm just gonna skip it. But you can go through and take a look at it at your leisure. So once you get to this screen, you're gonna see these five different options, and you have to kind of do one at a time, more or less. Or you could choose to skip it as well. So the naming of this isn't very critical. It's just really for your own bookkeeping, because the IRS isn't gonna look up the specific car that you have. So I primarily drive the 2013 Elantra. It doesn't make a distinction whether you own or lease this vehicle. So make sure to kind of pay attention to this choice, especially if you're renting or if you're using somebody else's vehicle. So you're gonna have to be a little bit careful with this. But and then also owning even if you finance the vehicle, you technically still own the vehicle, so you can just say yes. It's just the lease is the most important portion that they look for. I just say yes. So I did document my miles very carefully with the odometer in and out of any day that I drove. So I know that for the total miles that year, I drove 15,000 miles total, and then 10,000 of those miles I used for business. And that's a pretty rough ballpark of what you should be driving, anywhere between maybe 10 to 15,000 miles if you earn about $20,000 worth of income. Now, I have all the records to back up all these numbers. So if you don't, I'd be very careful into using any numbers that you haven't personally added up. Uber and Lyft does add up all of the miles that you've driven on a trip. So at the bare minimum, you can use those trip numbers, but they're going to be much lower than your actual driven miles for business. And it's typically about double what it is. But again, you can't justify it because you don't have the records to prove it. Uh, and the reason why they ask you for your total miles is because TurboTax will portion some of the car expenses based on um, based on how much you've driven business miles versus personal miles. So there are some things that they allocate based on that allocation use. But for the standard mileage rate, they do just calculate out 53.5 cents for every mile that you've driven for business expenses. So I typically just stick to the standard mileage deduction. It's actually probably more than what I spent on gas and other deductions anyway. Um, and especially for Lyft and Uber, a lot of these things don't really apply. But then when you go to deliveries, parking fees will be quite substantial. Tolls is probably more substantial for Lyft and Uber, but make sure to take a look at that screen when you get through it. So I only have one car here, but you can list multiple cars. If you use multiple different cars, then you can kind of list all the deductions for each vehicle, especially if you have two main vehicles that you use. But for the sake of this analysis, we're just going to do the one. So for communications, I actually have a separate cell phone for my Lyft and Uber activities, and they're about $20 a month for just data, and then with 12 months, that's $240. So we can just do that. But again, I use these communications 100%. So that's why I listed it, all of that here. So they do list car cleaning supplies as something you can also deduct, so feel free to add that in. I usually buy wax and car wash supplies, car wash mitts, and equipment. Cell phone charger I'll put on here as well. Cell phone mount, another $10. But you can see more examples of this and just see what applies to you. I'm just going to put down a couple of things to have something in there. And then taxes and licenses. This is kind of tricky, but I'm just going to, because I did buy a car this year. You can put down sales tax for $600. I don't know if it'll actually be actually deducted, but you can try to put some of these fees in here. If you have any kind of licensing fees, you can try to put that in there and see if they'll deduct it. And then, so this is the other major section here, is all of the service fees. So Lyft commission, Uber service fees, and Uber operational costs. So when you go to your Uber or Lyft summary, the Lyft summary has it here. So you see, tolls, Lyft commission, and your gross earnings. So in this particular case, the gross ride earnings for me was $10,000 in that example. And then for Lyft commissions, 20% of that for me would be $2,000. And then you can see the net ride earnings will amount to about $8,000. And then with Uber, it's a very similar setup. So you have the gross fares up here, which is going to be about, in my case, it was $10,000. And then I would see the Uber service fee at about $2,000 because I get charged about 20%. And then the split fares and safe rides fees, they would all go into the deductions as well. So I'm gonna put Uber service fee as being 2,000. Lyft commission at about 2,000. So you get these numbers from both of the yearly summaries from Lyft and Uber. I do not believe they're in a 1099K. They just only list your gross earnings. And this would actually most likely be on your 1099K, but I really don't think that it's actually listed in there. So you actually have to go through your summaries in order to find these numbers. Luckily, you don't have to go back and calculate all this, but they do make a nice year-end summary, so they tally all these different things up. So let's say the Uber safe. So the difference between Lyft and Uber in this particular case is that Uber actually, as part of your gross income, they actually add the safe ride fee onto your gross income and then deduct it back from you. So you do have to go in and deduct the Uber safe ride fee of, it's probably going to be probably around $1,000. So once you do that, so this is now kind of all set up for you. So you have $20,000 worth of income and you got roughly about $10,000 worth of deductions, which is pretty good. So you're only gonna get taxed on roughly about $10,000 worth. So I grouped up all of my rideshare activities under rideshare driving. So you can you can totally just lump everything together, Uber, Lyft, and then also your delivery stuff, Amazon, Postmates. But I like to kind of keep them a little bit separate. So you could choose to add another line for self-employed work for deliveries. Let's say you use a different car for deliveries. Um, so you can kind of break out the different expenses. And they do a good job with kind of giving you the different choices here. So let's say food delivery. So you're gonna get very similar choices as you did with the previous one. It's just running through the same algorithm all over again. Um, so just say no and no. And the same thing here. So, like I said before, typically delivery services send out a 1099 miscellaneous purely based on how they pay you, which is they pay you directly from the company to you guys. So it's a 1099 miscellaneous, and you typically see that value online on box 3, and also you're gonna find their you're gonna see their employee ID number in there as well. So we're gonna expand this out. So typically you see your income here and also for state income as well. They just wanted to make the clarification that all of your income is falls under state income as well, and then you'll be subjected to state taxes. And this form is actually, obviously quite different from the 1099K. If you work for, other services, Postmates, Instacart, DoorDash, even Uber Eats, you could fill out one for each and every one of them. But it seemed like I'm just gonna go through this just to show you guys that you can do two separate line items and you can kind of keep things a little bit separated. I'm not gonna do any of the vehicle deductions because I kind of went over it, but I'll do the supplies because for deliveries, they do have slightly different expenses. So I just kind of wanted to highlight some of those. So it wouldn't be necessarily be car cleaning supplies, but then you'll have an insulated bags. I spent about $50. You can have a luggage cart. Especially for Instacart where you have those crazy orders from Costco. A luggage cart or one of those collapsible carts really comes in handy. And then so I ran into this issue with Instacart where I actually ran out of batteries shopping for one of my orders because the service was horrendous inside of the Whole Foods, and my battery kept getting drained. And you spend very little time in your car, most of the time outside your car, so I pretty much had to buy one, just in case my battery ran out. So these are kind of some of the things that I purchased for deliveries. So I skipped over vehicles, like because I already went over that. But if you drove a different car, or there's some expenses, vehicle related expenses that wasn't captured in the other section, then you can go ahead and just add that in. Um, I just say no. So I'm done with this. No other different types of work. Um, just say continue. So the next section is gonna be more on your personal deductions. And then trying to figure out which one is the best for you, whether it's the standard deduction or having to itemize. But again, being that I'm doing a very simple deduction or very simple tax return, I don't have anything like mortgage interest or state taxes or kind of things like that. Um, so I'm going to check off this one at least because I registered my car. So hopefully we can get a small deduction out of that. And again, this primarily, as you can see, that this is only based in Massachusetts, that I can actually deduct the motor vehicle excise tax that we have to pay every year. I mean, it's not very bad at all. For my car, I believe it was 150, but this is very state dependent. So you definitely may not see this if you're in California, if there are certain provisions that you can deduct. On a federal level, you can't. So I wouldn't be surprised if you haven't seen that at all. So right now it's telling me that the $150 deduction isn't high enough to itemize. So I'm going to take the standard deduction. Now all your business expenses, all of those are automatically itemized. They don't fall under the standard deduction. So you technically kind of get two deductions. You get all your business related deduction and then you also your standard deduction. So it doesn't look nearly as bad as you think. Um, but I kind of went through the deductions very quickly because I didn't have a lot of income. But once you start adding other types of income, other types of assets, then you're going to have a lot more deductions. So again, it asked me if I wanted to do um, kind of a premium feature, Turbotax. I said I didn't want to. I'm just going to keep asking you all these different questions. Just say, um, so it just confirmed that the standard deduction is right for me. So now it's asking me for some of my other information, but so that pretty much covers everything that you need to know about listing your business income and deductions. Um, this last section is just other tax deductions or situations that you may encounter. So this one, the estimated taxes, is the one that kind of caught my eye. So I would definitely do this. Um, so just say no for now. So the previous question asked if you want to change your withholding. If you believe that your income is actually going to go up for 2018, then you can possibly increase the estimated payments that you make. But if you don't know how much you're going to make, then just rely on this estimated taxes procedure here. So it's telling you that you should pay $335 a quarter in order to satisfy the estimated tax requirement. Just say no. So at the end of your tax filing, it's actually going to print out some forms for you to fill out so that you can pay your estimated taxes. You can do it online, but these vouchers just kind of remind you how much you should pay every quarter. Um, but don't I but take a quick look at these other situations and see if they apply to you. But I don't believe that a lot of people will fall under this. Um, and that pretty much covers the entire federal section. Um, so you can see that I didn't put in anything in terms of payment for the federal taxes, and you can see that now I have a penalty of $32 for not paying my estimated taxes. That was the reason why there was a question earlier that asked you whether this was your first year doing the business or you just started in 2017. If this was not the first year you're doing business and you did not report that you had paid any taxes, then they're gonna come after you for the underpayment penalties. So make sure to watch out for that. So if you have made estimated taxes, we're gonna go back and add that into the deduction and credits. So if you see under all tax breaks, you're gonna see that the estimates and other tax paid, and you can also include other income taxes that you paid, state taxes that you paid, because you can see that I owe $148 for state taxes and any other taxes. So this is where you're going to enter in that information. So just say yes. So it already pre-populated all this for you. So I'm just gonna put in 335. That's how much I needed to put on there. Now, if you had made additional payments throughout the year, so let's say you didn't have $335 in April, then you made two payments. You made 150 in April, you made another 180 in May, then you can actually add in additional payments. Or if you didn't pay any at all, then you just remove one of these as well. And then it'll calculate the penalties. I mean, as you saw before, the penalty is only 20 some odd dollars or $32, so it wasn't really that much. But that's definitely something you need to capture. So right, that's fine. And then for the state estimated taxes, I had about 140 bucks there. So let's do 40 or 35. And then, you can see on the left how much taxes you paid per state. So, if you lived in multiple states, then you're gonna choose off the different states that you paid towards, and that's where the additional payment amount comes in handy if you're in multiple states. Then, or you need to make payments to multiple states anyway, then this is a handy tool for you to use. So that's how you enter in your estimated taxes into TurboTax, so it doesn't freak out at the end saying you owe a whole bunch of money. So you could see that I don't owe anything, and that my MA balance is only about $8. So this is the critical section that you'll need in order to enter in your estimated tax payments.